moving away from that territory, from this territory of crossing the arising and passing away, or the Kundalini awakening, and then working with the more challenging aspects of experience, which tend to bring up this feeling of like, I'm doing this totally wrong. I don't know what happened. I lost it. I was awakened. Now I'm not. And the challenges that come afterwards, which can bring up so much dark stuff into one's awareness, that becomes very challenging to work with if you don't have somebody who tells you, actually, you're doing a really good job. Now your challenge is to focus on this. Yeah.
Yeah, first, the thing you mentioned, the normalization that after spiritual highs might come spiritual lows, that after a high degree of spiritual power or competence, the ability to sit for hours or dissect reality into fine-grained things or see channels or have this amazing bliss, there might come a loss of all that, and even what feels like a profound regression, or even diving into darker territory than people have ever been in. Just the fact that that happens for some, that cycle is very empowering. So once you get past the simple fact of normalization, then there are endless debates about how you best deal with that territory, right? Should you be focusing broadly? Should you be opening your eyes? Should you be grounding in the body and the breath? Should you be cultivating positive factors? Should you be plunging into your darkness? Should you be, like being more social and hanging out with friends, integrating in the community, like versus, doing long solitary retreats, working on your karma for the next life? Or should you be going for, deeper levels of awakening now? These are sort of endless debates. Should you be, relying on the divine grace of your deity or guru, or should you be, cultivating high degree of technical competence such that you can shift intentionally to next stages, right? These are all kinds of debates that flip, whole community, actually can tear apart whole communities and have caused a lot of division among people. But just realize there are a lot of ways to play this. I myself have talked to thousands of people and read thousands of posts of people dealing with this, have seen a lot of things work. So that's the interesting thing. There are an extremely wide range of things that can sometimes work for certain people at certain times in their practice. Will they work for you? I don't know. But at least having the optionality and the ability to explore and experiment and see what actually helps you can be very useful in recognizing that there is a lot out there of reasonable advice in this territory, some of which seems apparently contradictory and a lot of which can work. That's why people are replicating it. Is sort of part of the fun and the adventure. At the moment, we don't know optimal strategies for predicting exactly the best way to deal with it for you. One of the things I hope that the EPRC researchers are able to come up with is reasonable predictive strategies of what is likely to be best for someone based on their, sense door proclivities, or the particular religious traditions they resonate best with, or something in their epigenetics or biomarkers, or what is it going to be that where we know actually for your particular case, this is the most optimal strategy for a soft landing, for dealing with this well, for achieving your particular goals, because people's goals are different, right? Their risk tolerances are different. Right? You have people who are like, they just don't want to get into dark territory because they've got jobs and kids and they can't handle a disruption in their life. They've got debts and they're like, no, 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 no. And you've got other people who are just balls to the wall, gung ho, like plunging in as, they want to plunge to the highest highs and the greatest spiritual depths and crash through it all, with sort of bravado. And then you get people who think they want the one and end up really wanting the other, and think they want this one, and are like, actually, nope, I'm going screaming back to family and job, and like, no, that was too much. I don't, and so you see these oscillations. But what we don't have at the moment is perfect optimized strategies that we're certain can meet with a person's individual goals and risk tolerances, which is one of the reasons for more research. But at least recognizing that there is a range of practices that may be more likely to lead to glory, but also more risk, or more likely to lead to stabilization, but perhaps less dramatic and profound and amazing or challenging effects, right? So one of so if you think about this as like a car, and one of the things is the accelerator for people who really want these effects, right? How do you push faster into this territory and get to the really cool, amazing stuff that people can get into? That's an important part of the car, but also just as important, or more important, are having good brakes where you can slow the thing down when it's going too fast, and recognizing that sometimes braking is a really important thing to do, right? If these openings are teaching their lessons, if you want to look at it from that kind of point of view, a little bit too fast for you to handle it skillfully and not cause harm to yourself or others. And then as well as a steering wheel, right? So being able to steer this into various directions, right? And say, hey, there's this way, and we can tune it for people who really do like the energetic powersy stuff, and we can tune it for people who really do like the insighty, wisdomy, other kind of awakening kind of stuff, or tune it for really soft landings, or tune it for maximum drama. You get these people who that's what they like, how to drive this thing in multiple dimensions, right? Using different techniques, energetic focuses, attentional focuses, diet, exercise, doses of of practice, doses of substances, and then the whole question of where does the whole world of pharmacology fit into this, both in terms of speeding it up and slowing it down. These are all complicated questions. And so, yeah, I've just raised a whole lot of issues. I wish I had more answers, but at least knowing that there's a lot of interesting debates out there is really, I think, even more important than someone demonstrating absolute certainty on a podcast where absolute certainty does not exist.
So what did you find most useful in your life, or what do you find useful these days if you're plunging into some very intense energetic territory? How do you slow it down? How do you stabilize, or what have you found most useful in terms of tools?
Again, these are things I wish we had better science on. So, what you're getting, scientific evidence quality, is expert opinion filtered through a hybrid tradition modified by the biased case series of people who have resonated with my stuff and presented to me, just so we have appropriate epistemological underpinnings of what I'm about to say. Filtered through a whole lot of reading of diverse traditions and a sort of a rough perennialism mixed with a clinical pragmatism. Okay, given that that's where I'm coming from, what I have found useful, first of all, I would read A Path with Heart, chapters 9 and 10. Actually, the section on naming the demons as well is really good. Like, so this is just useful technology. The books of Tara Springett get recommended a lot. I have not gone through them to the detail. I know A Path with Heart, but they get well recommended. You can check out some of the grounding technologies you're going to find in books like the works of Emma Bragdon. What you're going to find in a lot of these places is maybe practice less or stop practicing entirely. Or if you're going to practice in a much reduced way, open eyes likely is going to lead to better effects than closed eyes, in terms of like slowing the thing down, I think, or expanding it out in a more balanced way. Heavier diets get recommended all the time for good reason. Like, I would love science behind this, but do I think like a heavier, more fat and carb heavy diet rather than something really light with not eating meals after noon, noon and creating more ketones? Do I think the heavier diet of more meals per day and more snacking and stuff is likely to create more grounding? Yeah, I do. Is there great science behind that? No, I wish there was. Making sure you get sleep every night. So like, this is critical. Find a way to sleep, find ways to exhaust yourself through exercise, or, that's safe and not hurting your body or, causing you to run into trouble. That way can be very helpful. Normalizing this, find friends and community. So find teachers and people who are grounded and can hold a space for you, and yet model also a much calmer way of being and encourage that. Figuring out how to grab the controls of your own energy level. So just like we can figure out how to raise energy in the morning when we want to get up, but we're tired, but we have to go to work and we have to drive in traffic or whatever, we can also figure out ways to calm ourselves down, figuring out where your own internal levers are and how they work in terms of moderating energy level. This is a skill set we can learn, and it's definitely cultivatable. Do I find guided meditation sometimes helpful for people? Yin yoga, very helpful. That's a pretty cool technology. Anything where you're focusing on energy centers that are down out of your head. So like if you were focusing on the nose and the breath or the head or something, like bring the energy down to the abdomen. If you were focusing on the abdomen, do walking meditation, bring it down to your feet. Do I think walking practice is really helpful rather than sitting practice? Yes, I do. Things like digging in the earth, gardening, it gets recommended in like Jack Kornfield's book, A Path with Heart. Do I think these can be very helpful? Yeah. Also, if something's going really haywire, thinking about a kind of a trauma-informed perspective, right? So are you touching into some challenging stuff from your own past, and the body keeps the score, that kind of stuff? Or checking out books like Trauma Sensitive Mindfulness by David Treleaven with Willoughby Britton can be very helpful if there's a trauma component to what's going on, because some of the stuff can get into stuff that can be very triggering for people related to something that has happened to them, and are centers that want to try to keep us safe might get re-triggered. And so having those kinds of trauma-informed perspectives can be super useful. That's kind of like my quick scattergun kind of approach. But if I was actually talking to someone, there's a bunch more that would come out, but it would come out in the context of them, their sensor proclivities, the specifics of what are going on with them, what they've tried that worked and didn't. Like, there's more. There's more there, but that's like a quick general blanket things that I think are likely to be useful and hopefully not harmful. Again, not based on great science, but expert case series, basically biased expert case series. Was that what have you found that you found useful?
Yeah, it's a good question because I haven't run into this territory, at least not. Yeah, now I'm doing more retreats that are relational. I guess I haven't sat in intense silence for some time, so my focus has really shifted over the past few years, because I think I focused so much exclusively on meditating in silence for some years. So somehow flipped to the other end. But what I found useful was, yeah, it's those things that you mentioned when you meditate for, I don't know, 12 to 16 hours a day and not sleep so much and then not eat after 12. This tends to I'm more prone to these very high energy, hyper activated states also these days. So what I found is like consciously consciously slowing down everything has been very useful. But it's a problem if you're sitting in a monastery that they don't serve food after midday. And yeah, one of the monks once told me, next time if you don't sleep, take a sleeping pill because I don't want to see you not sleeping for so long. But he didn't have one to give me. So yeah, it can be very tricky to figure out what to do at any time. But if it gets too quick, if it gets too inspired, too much, too high energy, then I tend to slow it down with the walking, with running, with physical exercise. Yeah, doing the opposite of just sitting in silence and in stillness tends to like concentrate the energy further and further and further and further, and this can create these manic states that can be so fun, and yet yeah, they have their crashes afterwards. So that's what I found that was most useful for me, and also not taking the perspectives so seriously. Of course, documenting them, writing them down, figuring it out, and then seeing how they, like everything else, tends to change over time. So